I sat at the birthday table surrounded by family, watching my grandfather Arthur stand up with a glass of champagne, smiling warmly at me. He announced loudly, his voice carrying across the private dining room. "Show me how you've used your $9 million trust fund after 25 years, Max. I can't wait to hear what you've accomplished." The room went completely silent. My heart pounded against my ribs. I could barely whisper the words, "I never got one." Arthur's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, placed thick file folders on the white tablecloth. My parents, Diana and Frank, turned white as sheets. The air in that upscale restaurant felt like it had been sucked out through a vacuum. I stared at the bank statements Mr. Harrison had spread across the table, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the papers. There it was in black and white, a trust fund established by my grandfather on the day I was born. The initial balance made my vision blur. $9 million. $9 million from Arthur's successful manufacturing business sale, set aside specifically for me. I flipped through page after page of monthly statements, watching the balance decrease year after year. The current balance sat at the bottom of the most recent statement, $473. My throat tightened. 25 years of withdrawals, all documented with clinical precision. My parents were listed as trustees until I turned 25, which was today, this very day. They were supposed to give me access today. They had never mentioned a single word about it. My current reality crashed against this revelation like waves against rocks. I worked 2 jobs just to survive. By day, I processed insurance claims in a cramped cubicle, dealing with angry customers and impossible quotas. 3 nights a week, I tended bar at a dive downtown, coming home smelling like beer and cigarette smoke at 2 in the morning. My studio apartment sat in a neighborhood where I heard sirens every night. The building had roaches no matter how much I cleaned. My car, a 15-year-old sedan, had a transmission that ground and whined every time I shifted gears. I had been saving for 8 months to afford the repairs, but every time I got close, some other emergency drained my account. Student loan debt crushed me under its weight. $78,000 from 3 years at State University before I had to drop out. I remembered that day clearly, sitting in the financial aid office, being told there was no more money available. I had begged, explained, pleaded. The counselor had looked at me with pity and said there was nothing she could do. I had walked out of that building knowing my dreams of finishing my degree were over. That was 4 years ago. I had been working ever since, barely keeping my head above water. I looked up from the statements at my mother, Diana. My voice came out hoarse. "Where is my money?" Diana's perfectly made-up face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks, ruining her expensive mascara. "Max, sweetheart, we can explain. You have to let us explain." My father Frank pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His face flushed red with anger or embarrassment. I could not tell which. "We used it for the family. Max, everything we did was for this family." Grandfather Arthur had been silent until that moment. Now he spoke, and his voice carried a weight I had never heard before. "I only discovered this last month during a routine check with my financial advisor. I had been in poor health for the past few years, had not monitored the account the way I should have. When I recovered and checked, when I saw what had happened, I was horrified. Mr. Harrison, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes, pulled out another folder. "Max, I need to show you something else." He spread out more documents. These were not just bank statements. These were receipts, purchase records, detailed accounting that his team had clearly spent weeks compiling. My parents had not just spent the money on family necessities. The records told a different story entirely. Luxury car purchases over the years, a Mercedes, a BMW, a Lexus, another BMW, a Porsche, a Cadillac Escalade. Total cost, $900,000. A vacation home in Aspen. Purchased when I was 12 years old. $1.2 million. Country club memberships and fees spanning 2 decades. $300,000. Designer shopping sprees documented through credit card statements. $400,000 worth of clothes, jewelry, handbags. Exotic vacations to Europe, the Caribbean, Hawaii, Australia. $500,000. I remembered those years when I was 12, 13, 14. My parents had started going away on trips, leaving me with babysitters or my grandmother. They had said they needed couple time. I had felt abandoned but told myself it was normal. Now I understood. They were staying at a vacation home purchased with my money, a home I had never even seen. The restaurant staff had stopped pretending not to watch. Other diners in the main dining room were craning their necks to see what was happening in our private room. I felt exposed, raw, like someone had peeled back my skin. My younger sister Bailey sat across from me, her face pale with shock. Bailey was 22, graduating from an expensive private university in 3 months. I had always wondered how my parents afforded her school when they had claimed poverty during my college years. Now I knew. Bailey's education had been paid for with my trust fund. She did not know. I could see the realization dawning on her face as she looked at the documents. Max! Diana reached for my arm. Please sit down and listen to us. We can work this out. I stood abruptly, my chair falling backward and clattering against the floor. I pulled my arm away from her grasp. Work this out? You stole $9 million from me. You watched me struggle, go into debt, drop out of school, work myself into the ground, and you said nothing. You did nothing. You just kept spending. Max, wait. Arthur called after me as I headed for the door. We need to talk about what happens next. There are legal options. Please do not leave like this. But I could not stay in that room another second. I pushed through the restaurant, ignoring the stairs, and stumbled out into the parking lot. The night air hit my face, cold and sharp. I stood next to my broken-down car and tried to breathe. My entire life had been a lie. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every moment of desperation and fear about money had been unnecessary. I should have had $9 million. Instead, I had $473 in a trust account and $78,000 in debt. The next morning, I sat in my grandfather's study, a room I had always loved as a child. Dark wood bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes and family photographs. Arthur sat across from me in his favorite chair, looking older than I had ever seen him. Mr. Harrison sat beside him, multiple folders spread across the coffee table between us. Max, I need to apologize to you, Arthur began, his voice thick with emotion. I trusted Diana and Frank completely. They are my daughter and son-in-law. I never imagined they would betray you like this. The trust was ironclad. Every document specified that the money was solely for your benefit, your education, your future, your security. I set it up that way deliberately. Mr. Harrison opened his briefcase and pulled out more documents. I have completed a full accounting of every withdrawal over the past 25 years. The total amount taken from your trust is $8,500,000. He walked me through the breakdown. The Aspen Vacation Home, $1.2 million. Purchased when I was 12. I had never been allowed to go there. 6 luxury vehicles over the years, $900,000 total. I remembered each time a new car appeared in the driveway, how excited my parents had been. Country club memberships and fees? $300,000. My parents had spent countless afternoons playing golf and tennis while I worked after-school jobs. Designer clothing and jewelry? $400,000. I thought about my own wardrobe, bought from thrift stores and discount retailers. Exotic vacations? $500,000. I had never been on a family vacation. Every time I had asked as a kid, I was told we could not afford it, that it was irresponsible spending. Home renovations to their primary residence, $800,000. The kitchen remodel when I was 16. The bathroom upgrades when I was 19. The finished basement when I was 21. All funded by my money. There is something else you need to know about Bailey, Mr. Harrison said gently. He showed me tuition payment records. My sister had not received scholarships to her expensive private university. My parents had paid her full tuition, room, board, every expense. The money had come directly from my trust fund. Over 4 years, Bailey's education had cost $320,000. She was now in graduate school, also fully funded, heading toward a total cost of $400,000, all from my trust. Bailey did not know. She thought she had earned her way through school. She had no idea that her debt-free education had come at the cost of my dropped-out, debt-ridden attempt at a degree. Mr. Harrison pulled out his tablet and showed me something that made my stomach turn. Screenshots from my parents' social media accounts. Photos I had seen over the years but never really looked at closely. My mother, Diana, in Paris, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, wearing designer clothes and holding shopping bags. My father, Frank, snorkeling in crystal blue Caribbean water, both of them at a fancy restaurant in New York, holding up glasses of expensive wine. A photo of them on a Hawaiian beach at sunset. Another of them skiing in Switzerland. Picture after picture of luxury and leisure. During those same years, I had been eating ramen noodles for dinner most nights. I had been working double shifts and coming home too exhausted to do anything but collapse. I had been carefully counting every dollar, choosing between paying rent or buying groceries, skipping meals to save money. I had lost a girlfriend I cared about because I could never afford to take her anywhere nice. Because I was always working, always stressed about money. She had finally told me she needed someone who had time for her, who could occasionally do something fun. I had not blamed her then. I blamed my parents now. Mr. Harrison's expression grew more serious. Max, there is something else. 2 weeks ago, when Arthur started asking questions about the trust, Diana and Frank attempted to cover their tracks. They tried to forge documents, claiming you had received disbursements for education expenses over the years. They created fake receipts, fake payment records, trying to show that the money had gone to you. He showed me the forged documents. They were clumsy, obvious fakes to anyone who looked closely. Dates that did not match my actual enrollment periods. Signatures that looked nothing like mine. Amounts that made no sense. This could constitute fraud, Mr. Harrison said. Beyond the breach of fiduciary duty, beyond the theft, they attempted to create false documents. That is a criminal offense. I sat back in the chair, feeling like I might be sick. My parents had not just stolen from me. They had tried to cover it up with forgery. They had been willing to commit fraud to hide what they had done. Arthur leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. Max, I have been ill with heart problems these past few years. I wanted to check on your trust before I died to make sure you were taken care of, that you would be secure. When I discovered what Diana and Frank had done, it nearly killed me. The stress, the betrayal, the guilt. I felt responsible. I should have been monitoring the account. I should have checked in more often. This is not your fault, I said, my voice breaking. You trusted your daughter. That is what parents and children are supposed to do. You did nothing wrong. Neither did you, Arthur said firmly. You need to understand that. You did nothing to deserve this. But I had spent my entire adult life feeling like I was failing, like I was not trying hard enough, not working hard enough, not smart enough, or capable enough to get ahead. My parents had watched me struggle and had said nothing. They had let me believe I was the problem. Mr. Harrison closed his folders and looked at me directly. Max, you have legal options. You can file a civil lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty. You can recover damages. Given the forged documents, criminal charges are also possible if a prosecutor decides to pursue the case. But I need to know what you want to do. This is your decision. He handed me a folder containing all the evidence his team had compiled. Bank records, receipts, photographs, the forged documents, everything. Take this home. Think about what you want. There is no rush, but know that you have rights, and you have recourse. I left Arthur's house feeling more lost than I had felt the night before. I drove back to my tiny apartment, climbed the stairs past the broken elevator, and sat on my second-hand couch. I looked around at my life, the water-stained ceiling, the radiator that clanked and hissed, the windows that did not close properly, letting in drafts, the card table I used as a desk, the mattress on the floor in the corner, because I could not afford a bed frame. All of this had been unnecessary. I could have finished college. I could have started my career years ago. I could have had security, stability, peace of mind. Instead, I had lived in constant fear and stress, while my parents vacationed and shopped and lived in luxury. I opened the folder and looked at the evidence again. My parents' smiling faces in vacation photos. Numbers on bank statements showing withdrawal after withdrawal. The poorly forged documents they had created to try to cover their tracks. For the first time since my grandfather's revelation at dinner, I felt something other than shock and pain. I felt anger. Pure, burning, righteous anger. They had stolen from me. They had lied to me. They had watched me suffer. And they had tried to cover it up. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Harrison. When he answered, I said clearly, I want to pursue every legal option available, civil and criminal. I want them to face consequences for what they did. Understood, Mr. Harrison replied. I will start the paperwork tomorrow. 3 days later, I drove to my childhood home for the first time since the birthday dinner. As I pulled up, I saw the house with new eyes. It was far nicer than I had remembered. The exterior had been renovated with expensive stonework. The landscaping was professional and immaculate. The driveway was paved with decorative brick. All improvements I now realized had been paid for with my money. My father's luxury sedan sat in the driveway, a sleek silver BMW. My mother's designer SUV, a white Lexus, was parked beside it, both purchased with my trust fund while I drove a car that might break down any day. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key. I was not family anymore. I was a plaintiff in a lawsuit. Diana opened the door. She looked like she had not slept since the birthday dinner. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her expensive clothes wrinkled. "Max," she said, her voice trembling, "thank you for coming. Please, come in." Frank sat in the living room, his arms crossed, his expression hard. He did not stand when I entered. The room was expensively furnished: leather couches, a massive television, artwork on the walls. I recognized none of it from my childhood. It had all been purchased in recent years. With my money. "You wanted to talk," I said, standing in the doorway. "So talk." Diana wrung her hands, perching on the edge of a chair. "You have to understand, Max. We were going to tell you about the trust eventually. We were managing the money for your benefit. For my benefit?" I kept my voice level. How was a vacation home in Aspen for my benefit when I never got to use it? When I did not even know it existed? "We were going to bring you there," Diana said weakly. "I am 25 years old. You have owned that house for 13 years. When exactly were you planning to bring me?" Frank spoke up, his voice harsh. "We had access to that money legally. We were the trustees. We had every right to use it as we saw fit. How were your luxury cars for my benefit when I drove a car that breaks down constantly?" I continued, ignoring Frank's interruption. "How was Bailey's full ride to private school for my benefit when I dropped out of State University drowning in debt?" Diana started crying again. "We always meant to tell you about the remaining funds when you turned 25. The remaining funds." I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank statement. $473. That is what remains of $9 million. Were you planning some big presentation about my $400 inheritance? "We got carried away," Diana whispered. "We made mistakes. But we never meant to hurt you. You watched me work 2 jobs. You watched me skip meals to save money. You watched me drop out of college. You watched me go into debt. And you never said a word. You never offered to help. You just kept spending my money on yourselves." Frank stood up, his face flushed with anger. "You are being ungrateful, Max. We raised you. We fed you and clothed you and put a roof over your head for 18 years. We deserve some compensation for that." "Compensation?" I stared at him. "You think parents deserve to be compensated for raising their children? You think that is how family works? You do not understand the pressure we were under," Diana said. "Your grandfather gave us too much responsibility. It was too much temptation. We are only human." "You are right," I said coldly. "I do not understand. I do not understand how you could watch your own son suffer when you had the power to help him. I do not understand how you could lie to me every single day for 25 years. I do not understand how you could steal from your own child." The front door opened behind me. Bailey walked in, and I saw she was carrying a box. Her face was set with determination. "Bailey, honey, what are you doing here?" Diana stood up quickly. "I have been doing some investigating," Bailey said. She set the box on the coffee table. "I found these in the attic yesterday." She pulled out old letters, documents yellow with age. "These are letters between the two of you from years ago, from before Max was even born, and from when he was little." I read them all. Bailey spread them out. I could see my parents' handwriting. Diana picked up one of the letters, her hand shaking. "You went through our private correspondence. You stole from my brother," Bailey said flatly. "Yes. I went through your stuff, and I found proof that you planned this from the beginning. Look at this one. From right after Max was born. Mom," you wrote, "Arthur set up this enormous trust for Max. It feels like he is rubbing our faces in his wealth. Like he loves Max more than he ever loved me. I think we should have access to manage it." And Dad's response: "The trust gives us control. Until Max is 25. That is plenty of time to make sure we benefit from Arthur's generosity. He will never know the difference." Diana's face drained of all color. Frank sat down heavily. There are dozens of these, Bailey continued, pulling out more letters. You planned from the start to treat Max's trust as your personal bank account. You viewed it as your money, not his. You resented Grandpa for giving it to Max instead of to you. Bailey pulled out a journal, old and worn. And this, Mom, this is your journal from when Max was growing up. Do you want me to read some entries? Here is one from when Max was 7. Max is so much like Arthur. The same serious expression, the same careful way of thinking about things. Sometimes when I look at Max, all I see is my father watching me, judging me. I know Arthur thinks I am not good enough. He set up that trust because he does not think Frank and I can provide for Max properly. Every time I see that trust statement, I feel angry. Why should Max get everything when we get nothing? I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. My mother had resented me as a child. She had looked at me and seen my grandfather, and she had hated that. Bailey, stop, Diana begged. Please stop. But Bailey kept going. Here is another entry from when Max was 14. We used trust money to buy the Aspen house. I know we should not have, but it felt good to finally benefit from Arthur's money. He wanted Max to have security. Well, this house makes us secure. That counts, doesn't it? And another from when Max was 19. Max asked for help with college tuition again today. I told him we could not afford it. The lie came so easily. The truth is, we could afford it 20 times over. But if we give the money to Max, there will not be enough for us. For the life we have built, I have worked hard to maintain our status at the club, our reputation in the community. We deserve this life. Max will be fine. He is young and capable. He can take out loans like everyone else. Diana was sobbing now, her face in her hands. Frank just stared at the floor. You were jealous, I said quietly. You were jealous of your own son. You felt like Grandpa loved me more than you, so you punished me for it. You took what was mine because you felt entitled to it. And you never cared how much you hurt me. Bailey came and stood beside me. Max, I am so sorry. I had no idea. If I had known that my education came from your trust, I never would have accepted it. I thought it was scholarships and Mom and Dad's savings. I feel sick knowing what they did. It is not your fault, I told her. You did not know. They lied to both of us. I am going to pay you back, Bailey said firmly. When I graduate and get a job, every extra dollar I have will go to you until I have paid back every cent they spent on my education. Bailey, no. Diana reached for her daughter. You do not need to do that. Yes, I do, Bailey said, stepping away from Diana's reach. Because it is the right thing to do, which is something you apparently never learned. I looked at my parents, these people who had given me life but then spent 25 years betraying me. I came here to hear your explanation. I heard it. You felt entitled to my money because Grandpa loved me and you were jealous. You built a life of luxury while I struggled because you cared more about your status and possessions than about your own son. And when you got caught, you tried to forge documents to cover it up. Max, please. Diana stood up. We can fix this. We will sell the Aspen house. We will give you whatever we get from it. We will make payments. Just please, do not destroy our family. I am not the one who destroyed this family, I said. You did that 25 years ago when you decided your comfort was more important than my future. I turned to leave. If you pursue legal action, we will fight you, Frank said suddenly, his voice hard. We will hire the best lawyers money can buy. We will drag this out for years. You will spend whatever you might recover on legal fees. I looked back at him. Then I guess we will see each other in court. I walked out of that house with Bailey beside me. As we got to my car, she hugged me tightly. I am with you, Max. Whatever happens, I am on your side. Thank you, I whispered, hugging her back. That means everything. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror at the house I had grown up in. It had never really been my home. I just had not known it until now. 1 week later, I sat in a conference room at a law office downtown. Beside me were Grandfather Arthur and Mr. Harrison. Across the table sat Sarah Brennan, a litigation attorney with a reputation for winning tough cases. She was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed and direct. I have reviewed all the documentation Mr. Harrison provided, Sarah said, tapping a thick folder. Max, you have an exceptionally strong case. Your parents committed clear breach of fiduciary duty. They were trustees with a legal obligation to manage the trust solely for your benefit. Instead, they used it for their personal enrichment. The forged documents they attempted to create could constitute fraud, which opens the door to criminal charges. What are my options? I asked. Civil lawsuit to recover damages. We can sue for the full amount they took, plus interest, plus legal fees. Given the egregious nature of their conduct, we might also pursue punitive damages. The timeline varies. Some cases settle quickly when the defendants realize they cannot win. Others go to trial and can take months or years. And criminal charges. That depends on the prosecutor's office. I have contacts there. Given the amount involved and the attempted forgery, they might be interested. But they will want the civil case to move forward first. Let us gather all the evidence through discovery. Sarah's team began the process of building the case. They subpoenaed financial records from banks, credit card companies, the country club, everywhere my parents had spent money. They scheduled depositions for Diana and Frank. They traced every single purchase back to the trust withdrawals. One afternoon, Sarah called me into her office with a new discovery. Max, we found something interesting. Your parents refinanced their house 3 years ago. They used your trust as collateral without authorization. They essentially borrowed against money that was not theirs to borrow against. This adds another layer of liability. As the investigation continued, Sarah uncovered something I had not expected. Did you know your grandfather set up similar trusts for other grandchildren? I shook my head. Your cousin Jake, son of your Aunt Linda. Arthur set up an identical trust for him. Jake turned 25 2 years ago. His trustees, his parents, managed the trust responsibly. They used some money for Jake's education, but carefully documented everything. They gave Jake full access to the remaining balance on his 25th birthday. Jake got approximately $6.3 million after legitimate educational expenses. This information hit me hard. There was proof that my parents' behavior was not normal, not justifiable. Other trustees had managed these trusts correctly. Other families had honored the intent of the gift. My parents had simply chosen to steal. I met my cousin Jake for coffee. We had never been particularly close, but he greeted me with a hug. Max, I heard what happened. I am so sorry. What your parents did is beyond wrong. Can I ask you about your trust? I said. Of course. My parents told me about it when I was 18. They explained that Grandpa Arthur had set it up for my future. They used some for my college tuition, about $200,000, and they kept detailed records of every penny. When I turned 25, they gave me control of the rest. They actually apologized that they had used as much as they did for college, even though that was exactly what the trust was for. They apologized. They said they wished they could have paid for college themselves so I could have kept the full amount. Can you imagine? They felt guilty for using trust money for its intended purpose. Jake shook his head. I cannot believe your parents did what they did. If you need me to testify, to show how trusts were supposed to be managed, I will do it. Thank you, I said, feeling grateful for his support. With Arthur's help, I got a small personal loan to cover my immediate needs. For the first time in years, I went to a dentist and got the dental work I had been putting off. The root canal and crown cost $3,000. It felt like a fortune, but Arthur insisted, and I was in too much pain to refuse. I also started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Patricia Morgan, and she specialized in family trauma. In our first session, I broke down completely, telling her everything. She listened without judgment, then said gently, Max, you have experienced profound betrayal from the people who were supposed to protect you. That kind of wound takes time to heal. Over the following weeks, therapy helped me process the anger, the grief, the sense of loss. Dr. Morgan helped me understand that my parents' choices reflected their character, not my worth. She helped me see that I had survived despite their betrayal, that my resilience was something to be proud of. With Arthur's encouragement, I also began the process of applying to finish my college degree. I researched schools with good programs for adult learners. I started working on applications. For the first time in years, I let myself hope for a future that included more than just survival. But my parents did not go quietly. They hired Marcus Webb, an expensive attorney known for aggressive tactics. Within 2 weeks of Sarah filing the initial complaint, Marcus filed counterclaims. Defamation, they claimed, emotional distress. They alleged that I was being manipulated by Arthur, that this was all part of some scheme to punish Diana for unspecified childhood grievances with her father. More painfully, they began spreading lies to extended family. Phone calls went out to aunts, uncles, cousins. Diana painted herself as a victim, a mother whose ungrateful son was attacking her for doing her best to manage a complicated situation. Frank told people that I was greedy, that I had always been difficult and entitled. Some relatives believed them. I started getting calls and messages. An uncle told me I should forgive my parents, that family was more important than money. An aunt suggested I was being influenced by Arthur's wealth, that I had changed and become materialistic. A cousin posted on social media about how money destroyed families, clearly referencing my situation without naming me. Each message felt like another betrayal. People who had known me my entire life were willing to believe I was the villain in this story. But others reached out with support. Aunt Linda, Jake's mother, called me directly. "Max, I know what happened." Diana tried to tell me her version, but I asked Arthur for the truth. "What they did to you is unforgivable. I am here if you need anything." Friends from high school who heard about the situation sent messages of encouragement. My coworkers at both jobs, when they learned why I was distracted and stressed, offered their support. Word also spread in my parents' social circle. The country club where they had spent so much of my money started to feel uncomfortable for them. Other members whispered when they walked by. Some people confronted Diana directly, telling her what she did was wrong. Slowly, their perfect image began to crumble. Diana lost her position leading the country club book group. Frank faced awkward questions at his workplace when word got around. Their carefully constructed life of luxury and status started showing cracks. Despite the support I received, the guilt gnawed at me. I felt responsible for tearing apart the family. Late at night, I would lie awake, wondering if I was doing the right thing, if I should just let it go and try to move forward. But then, I would look at my student loan statements. I would remember the nights I went to bed hungry to save money. I would think about the girlfriend I lost because I was always too stressed and broke to be a good partner. I would remember dropping out of college and feeling like a failure. And I would remember that I had not done this. My parents had. They had made the choice to steal. They had made the choice to lie. They had made the choice to watch me suffer. I was simply choosing not to let them get away with it. Sarah called one evening with news. "Depositions are scheduled. Your mother in 2 weeks, your father the following week. This is when we really apply pressure. Be prepared. It is going to be difficult." I thanked her and hung up. Bailey came over that night with takeout. We sat in my tiny apartment and ate together. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "I do not know," I admitted. "But I know I cannot back down now." "Good," Bailey said firmly. "Because they need to face what they did. Not just for you. For me too. I am angry, Max. They lied to me my whole life. They made me think I earned my way, when really, I was living off your stolen money. I feel sick about it. It is not your fault. I know. But I still feel responsible, and I want them to be held accountable." We sat in silence for a while. Then Bailey said, "Whatever happens, we still have each other. And we have Grandpa. That is more than enough." She was right. I had lost my parents, but I had gained something more valuable. I had gained the truth, and I had gained the strength to fight for myself. The deposition took place in a sterile conference room with bland gray walls and a long table. A court reporter sat at one end, her fingers poised over her stenography machine. Sarah sat beside me, her presence solid and reassuring. Grandfather Arthur sat behind us with Mr. Harrison. On the other side of the table, my mother Diana sat with Marcus Webb, her attorney. Diana looked smaller than I remembered, her expensive clothes seeming to hang on her frame. She had lost weight. Her hands trembled as she placed them on the table. Marcus Webb whispered something to her, and she nodded. Sarah began methodically, her voice calm and professional. "Mrs. Diana Sullivan, you understand you are under oath. Yes, you were named as a trustee for your son Max's trust fund, established by your father Arthur Sullivan. Correct. Yes. And you understood that this trust was established solely for Max's benefit. Yes." Sarah pulled out a document. "This is the trust agreement. Please read Section 3, Paragraph 2, out loud." Diana's voice shook as she read. "The trustee shall manage and distribute funds solely for the health, education, welfare, and future security of the beneficiary. Maxwell Arthur Sullivan. Did you manage the funds solely for Max's benefit? Silence. Mrs. Sullivan, please answer the question. We used the money for family expenses. Sarah pulled out a receipt. This is a purchase record for a vacation home in Aspen, Colorado. Price: $1.2 million. Was this for Max's benefit? It was a family asset. Did Max ever use this property? Diana hesitated. No. Did you tell Max this property existed? No. How is a vacation home Max never knew about and never used for his benefit? He could have used it if he had asked. How could he ask to use a property he did not know existed? Marcus Webb interjected. Objection. Argumentative. Sarah moved on smoothly. This is a purchase record for a Mercedes-Benz. $85,000. Was this vehicle for Max? No, it was for me. Did this purchase benefit Max in any way? It was a family vehicle. Did Max ever drive this vehicle? He had his own car. His own 15-year-old sedan with a failing transmission while you drove a luxury car purchased with his trust money. Is that correct? Diana's voice was barely audible. Yes. Sarah went through purchase after purchase. Designer clothes, jewelry, country club fees, exotic vacations. Each time, she asked the same questions. Was this for Max? Did Max benefit? Did Max know? Each time, Diana had to answer no. Finally, Sarah pulled out Bailey's tuition records. Your daughter Bailey attended private university. 4 years of tuition, room, and board. Total cost $320,000. Was this paid from Max's trust? Yes. Did Max know his trust was paying for his sister's education? No. Did you tell Max you could not afford to help him with his college tuition? Diana started crying. Yes. Did you watch Max drop out of college due to lack of funds while simultaneously paying for Bailey's private school education with his money? Yes. The word came out as a sob. Did you feel that was fair? We were waiting for the right time to tell him. 25 years was not enough time. Diana broke down completely. Tears streamed down her face. Marcus Webb handed her tissues, whispering urgently in her ear. When she could speak again, her voice was thick with emotion. I felt entitled to the money. My father gave Max millions of dollars. He never gave me that kind of money. He set up this enormous trust for my son, and I felt like he was saying I was not good enough to provide for my own child. I was angry. I was jealous. The money was right there, and I convinced myself we deserved some of it. We worked hard. We raised Max. We deserved to benefit. So you stole from your son because you were jealous of your father's love for him. I did not think of it as stealing. What did you think of it as? Managing family resources. Sarah pulled out more documents. Were you managing family resources when you attempted to forge documents showing educational disbursements to Max? Diana's face went white. I do not know what you are talking about. These are documents you and your husband created 2 weeks after Arthur began investigating the trust. They purport to show tuition payments to Max's university. But Max's university has no record of receiving these payments. The dates do not match his enrollment periods. The signatures are not Max's. You created false documents to cover up your theft. Is that correct? Marcus Webb spoke quickly. My client declines to answer on the advice of counsel. That is her right, Sarah said calmly. Let the record show the witness declined to answer questions about falsified documents. Sarah turned to a new line of questioning. Did you love your son? Diana looked up, shocked. Of course I loved him. I love him. How do you show love to someone while stealing their future? I made a mistake. I made terrible mistakes. Multiple deliberate decisions over 25 years. Are those mistakes or choices? Both. Diana wiped her eyes. I never intended for it to go this far. At first, it was just a little here and there, but it became easier. We got used to the lifestyle, we justified it in our minds, and Max was doing okay, we thought. He was working, surviving. We told ourselves he did not need the money as much as we did. But he was not doing okay. He was working 2 jobs, going into debt, living in poverty, while you lived in luxury. I know that now. Frank's deposition the following week was worse. He sat across from us with his arms crossed, his expression hostile from the start. Where Diana had been emotional, Frank was defensive and angry. Mr. Frank Sullivan, did you understand you had a fiduciary duty to manage Max's trust solely for his benefit? Sarah began. I understood we had control of the trust until he turned 25. That is not what I asked. Did you understand? You were supposed to use the money only for Max. The trust gave us discretion in how to manage it. Did that discretion include buying luxury cars for yourself? We needed reliable transportation. Did it include a vacation home you never told Max about? That was an investment. An investment Max never benefited from, never knew about, and cannot use because you still control it. How is that managing money for Max? We were going to give him access eventually. When? After you spent every dollar. Frank's face flushed red. We had every right to use that money. We raised Max. We fed him and clothed him for 18 years. We deserved compensation. Parents deserve compensation for raising their children. We gave up a lot to raise him. What did you give up? Time, money, opportunities? And you felt entitled to $9 million in compensation for being a parent. My wife's father gave that money to Max to spite us. He never thought we were good enough. The trust was an insult. Sarah leaned forward. So you stole from your son to get revenge on your father-in-law for thinking you were not good enough? And in the process, you proved him right. Frank exploded. That old man manipulated Max from birth. He poisoned my son against us. Did he poison Max, or did your theft do that? Max should be grateful for everything we did for him. Grateful that you stole $9 million? Grateful that you watched him struggle while you lived in luxury? Grateful that you lied to him every day for 25 years. Frank's attorney tried to intervene, but Frank was on a roll. Max was always difficult, always ungrateful, always comparing himself to other kids who had more. We gave him a roof and food and clothes. That should have been enough. But no, he always wanted more, always whining about college, about money, about how hard his life was. He needed to learn responsibility, learn to work for what he wanted. By watching you spend his $9 million, that money made us better parents. It took pressure off us so we could focus on raising both our children properly. You felt Bailey's full ride to private school was raising both children properly while Max dropped out of state school due to debt. Bailey appreciated what we did for her. Bailey was respectful. Max was always Arthur's favorite. Always got special treatment. Bailey deserved the same opportunities. So you gave Bailey opportunities with Max's money, without telling either of them. Frank realized he had said too much. He sat back, his jaw clenched. Sarah introduced the forged documents. Did you create these false records? Frank's attorney jumped in immediately. My client declines to answer on advice of counsel. Did you attempt to cover up your theft by committing fraud? Declined to answer. The depositions ended with both my parents having provided devastating testimony. Sarah looked pleased as we left the building. They buried themselves. Diana admitted to entitlement and jealousy. Frank admitted to viewing the trust as compensation. Both refused to answer questions about the forgery, which will look terrible if we go to trial. During a break, I had overheard my parents in the hallway. Diana was crying, saying to Frank, "We destroyed our relationship with our son for money we have already spent. It is gone. All of it. And we have nothing to show for it except his hatred and a lawsuit." Frank had responded angrily. "This is Arthur's fault. He never should have set up that trust. He caused all of this." But I saw Diana's face in that moment. For the first time, she seemed to grasp the enormity of what they had done. Not just the theft, but the betrayal. Not just the money, but the relationship. That afternoon, Marcus Webb pulled Sarah aside. I watched them talk in hushed tones. When Sarah returned, she sat down with me, Arthur, and Mr. Harrison. "They want to settle," she said. "What are the terms?" Arthur asked. "They will sell the Aspen property immediately. Proceeds go directly to Max. After the mortgage and selling costs, that should be approximately $1 million. They will sell one of their luxury vehicles, another $60,000, and they will agree to a payment plan for the balance, $2,000 a month, until paid in full or until their deaths, whichever comes first. In exchange, Max agrees to drop any potential criminal charges related to the forgery." Sarah looked at me. "It is not the full $9 million. Not even close. But it is more than you would likely recover if they declare bankruptcy, which they might do if we push for everything. And the payment plan, while it will take decades, ensures they face ongoing consequences. I need conditions," I said, "such as, they have to publicly admit wrongdoing to our extended family. a written statement acknowledging what they did. They have to apologize formally to Arthur, and they have to attend financial counseling. If they miss a single payment, criminal charges are back on the table. Sarah nodded. I can work with that. The decision felt enormous. I could push forward, potentially see my parents face criminal charges, drag this through years of litigation, or I could accept the settlement, recover what I could, and try to move forward with my life. I looked at Arthur. He put his hand on my shoulder. It is your choice, Max. I will support whatever you decide. Bailey had been waiting outside. I went to talk to her. They offered a settlement. About $1 million now, payments over time. In exchange, I dropped the criminal fraud charges. Bailey considered this. What do you want to do? I want justice. But I also want to move on with my life. I do not want to spend years in courtrooms. I do not want to tie my future to their punishment. Then, take the settlement, Bailey said. Get what you can. Make them face some consequences. And build your life. That is the best revenge anyway. I returned to the conference room. I will accept the settlement with my conditions included. Sarah smiled. I will draft the paperwork. 2 weeks later, we returned to court for the judge to approve the settlement. The judge read through the terms, then looked at my parents over her glasses. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, you were entrusted with a sacred duty. You were given control over your son's future, and you betrayed that trust in the most egregious way. You stole from your own child to fund a lifestyle of luxury while he struggled. You lied to him, manipulated him, and when caught, you attempted to commit fraud. This court finds your conduct reprehensible. You are extraordinarily fortunate that your son has shown you more mercy than you showed him. This settlement is approved. Do not miss a single payment. The gavel came down. It was over. The sale of the Aspen property happened quickly. My parents were motivated to get it done, and the market was strong. 6 weeks after the settlement was finalized, I received a wire transfer for $1,100,000 after the mortgage payoff and all fees. I sat in my apartment, staring at my bank balance on my phone screen, hardly able to believe it was real. $1 million. It was not the $9 million I should have had, but it was more money than I had ever imagined having. The first thing I did was pay off my student loans completely, $78,000. Gone in a single payment. I logged into my loan servicer account and watched the balance change to zero. I actually cried. Next, I paid off my credit card debt, my medical bills, every outstanding balance I had. I scheduled the repairs for my car, then decided instead to buy a reliable used car. Nothing fancy. Just a 3-year-old Honda Accord with low mileage. It cost $22,000, and I paid cash. I moved out of my studio apartment into a decent one-bedroom in a safer neighborhood. The rent was higher, but I could afford it now. I bought real furniture. A bed with a frame and a real mattress. A couch that did not sag. A desk where I could work. Kitchen supplies beyond ramen and canned soup. I returned to university to finish my degree. I met with an advisor who helped me map out the remaining courses I needed. 18 months, she said. If I went full-time, I enrolled immediately. This time without the crushing stress of wondering how I would pay for it. With Arthur's recommendation, I met with his financial advisor, a woman named Catherine who specialized in helping people manage sudden wealth. She helped me set up investment accounts, explain diversification, taught me how to make the money grow responsibly. I was determined to never take wealth for granted the way my parents had. The $2,000 monthly payments started arriving from my parents like clockwork. I set up a separate account just for those payments. Over time, they would add up, another piece of the restitution I was owed. One afternoon, 3 months after the settlement, I was studying at a coffee shop when my phone rang. It was my mother's number. I hesitated, then answered. Max. Deanna's voice was quiet, uncertain. I know I have no right to call you. I just wanted you to know that Frank and I have separated. I filed for divorce last week. I did not know what to say. I have been in therapy since the depositions, she continued. Intensive therapy. Twice a week. I have been working through a lot of issues, mainly about my father, about how I handled my jealousy and resentment. My therapist helped me see how I took out my anger at Arthur on you, how I made you pay for my own insecurities. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I destroyed my relationship with my son, the most important relationship in my life, because I was too proud and too bitter to deal with my own problems. I lost you for money that is already gone, for possessions that meant nothing. I was a terrible mother, and I am so deeply sorry." Her voice broke on the last words. "I am not asking for forgiveness," Diana went on. "I know I do not deserve that. I just needed you to know that I am facing what I did. I am trying to change. I sold most of my designer clothes and jewelry. I am living in a small apartment now. I am working on being a different person, a better person. Even if you never speak to me again, I wanted you to know that." I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Anger. Yes, still plenty of anger. But also something like sadness. This was my mother, and she sounded genuinely broken. "I appreciate you telling me," I said carefully. "But I am not ready to have a relationship with you yet. I do not know if I ever will be." "I understand," Diana said. "I truly do. I just hope that someday, maybe years from now, we might be able to talk again. I will wait as long as it takes." She hung up. I sat there for a long time, processing the call. Bailey came to meet me an hour later. I told her about the conversation. "Mom has been calling me too," Bailey said. "She sounds different. Smaller. Somehow. Humbler. I think she is really trying to change." "What about Frank?" Bailey's expression hardened. "Dad has not changed at all. He remarried already. Some woman he met at his gym. She is wealthy, apparently. He is still making excuses. Still blaming everyone else. I have not talked to him in months. I am sorry. Don't be. I learned an important lesson from all this. Family is not just about blood. It is about how people treat you. Dad showed me who he is. I believe him." Over the following months, I threw myself into school. I had forgotten how much I loved learning when I was not constantly stressed about money. My grades were excellent. I joined study groups, made friends, participated in campus activities for the first time in my life. Arthur and I spent time together every week, sometimes just coffee, sometimes dinner, sometimes just sitting in his study, talking about life. He taught me about the family business he had built from nothing, about the principles that had guided him, about the mistakes he had made along the way. "I have been thinking about updating my estate planning," Arthur said one evening. "I want to make sure that when I am gone, there are proper safeguards in place. I made a mistake with your mother's trusteeship. I will not make that mistake again." "You trusted your daughter," I said. "That was not a mistake. What she did was her choice. Still, I can learn from it. I am setting up new trusts with independent trustees, professionals with legal obligations. And I am adding oversight mechanisms, regular audits, transparency requirements. No one will ever be able to do to another grandchild what Diana and Frank did to you." Arthur also worked on repairing his relationship with Diana. It was slow, cautious, but he made the effort. "She is still my daughter," he explained to me. "I'm angry at her for what she did to you. But I also see her trying to change. I can acknowledge that effort without excusing what she did." The extended family gradually learned the full truth. My parents had been required as part of the settlement to send a written statement to all family members acknowledging what they had done. The lies they had spread about me being greedy and manipulative were corrected. Some relatives who had believed their version apologized to me. Others quietly stopped contact with Diana and Frank. The country club asked my parents to resign their membership. Without the trust fund money, they could not afford it anyway. Their social circle, built on wealth and status, evaporated when both disappeared. I started seeing someone, a woman named Emma, who I met in one of my classes. She was smart, kind, and when I told her about my situation with my parents, she listened without judgment. She had grown up without much money and understood the value of working hard for what you had. We took things slowly, building a relationship based on honesty and respect. Bailey thrived in her final year of graduate school. She got a job offer from a nonprofit organization that worked with underprivileged youth, helping them access education. The irony was not lost on either of us. She used her experience, built on my stolen trust money, to help others who struggled the way I had struggled. True to her word, Bailey started making payments to me from her first paycheck. I tried to refuse, but she insisted. "This matters to me, Max. I need to do this." So I set up another account, separate from everything else, just for her payments. Someday, when enough accumulated, I planned to give it back to her as a gift. But for now, I let her make the gesture. One year after the birthday dinner that changed everything, I hosted a small dinner at my new apartment. Arthur, Bailey, Emma, and a few close friends. We ate good food, laughed, told stories. Arthur raised a glass. To Max, he said, who fought for himself when others would not fight for him. Who showed strength when the easy path would have been to give up. Who built a life worth living from the wreckage left by people who should have protected him. I am proud to be your grandfather. We all raised our glasses. I looked around at the people gathered in my home. People who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. People who had stood by me during the hardest time of my life. I thought about Diana, alone in her apartment, working through her issues in therapy. I thought about Frank, already remarried, still refusing to look at himself honestly. I thought about the 25 years of struggle that could have been avoided, the opportunities that were stolen from me. But I also thought about what I had gained, clarity about what mattered, strength I had not known I possessed, the knowledge that I could fight for myself and win, relationships built on truth rather than obligation. The settlement money kept arriving, $2,000 a month, every month. I watched it accumulate in that separate account. It would take decades to recover even a fraction of what was stolen. But that was not really the point anymore. The point was that I had stood up for myself. I had refused to accept the betrayal quietly. I had fought back. And I had won. 2 years after that birthday dinner, I walked across the stage at my university graduation. Bachelor's degree in finance, summa cum laude. Arthur sat in the audience with Bailey and Emma, all three of them cheering loudly when my name was called. I had finished what I started 6 years earlier, this time without the crushing weight of debt and fear. I had accepted a position at a prestigious financial planning firm in the city. The salary was excellent, the work interesting, the future bright. More importantly, I had found my purpose. I specialized in trust management and fiduciary law, helping families set up proper safeguards to protect beneficiaries. I became an advocate for trust reform, speaking at conferences about the importance of oversight and transparency. My story spread in financial planning circles, used as a cautionary tale about what happens when fiduciary duty is ignored. I wrote articles for industry publications about recognizing and preventing financial abuse. I helped other people who contacted me with similar situations, guiding them toward legal resources and emotional support. The apartment I had moved into 2 years earlier now felt like a real home. Emma had moved in 6 months ago, and we were talking about getting engaged. She loved me for exactly who I was, someone who understood the value of hard work and honest living. We took modest vacations, cooked dinner together most nights, and built a life based on shared values rather than material possessions. Bailey had thrived in her career at the nonprofit. She called me every week, and we had become closer than we had ever been as kids. She brought her partner, a kind man named Chris, who worked as a teacher, to family dinners regularly. Bailey had long since stopped making payments to me. I had insisted, telling her that the $8,000 she had managed to pay was more than enough, that it was time to save for her own future. The monthly payments from my parents continued without fail. In 2 years, they had paid $48,000 beyond the initial million. The money sat in its separate account, growing slowly. I had stopped thinking about it as restitution, and started thinking about it as a reminder that actions have consequences. Even years later, Arthur remained healthy and active. At 78, we had breakfast together every Sunday morning at his favorite diner. He had fully repaired his relationship with Diana, though it looked different than it had before. There were boundaries now, honest conversations, acknowledgement of past mistakes. Arthur said he loved his daughter but no longer trusted her blindly, and Diana seemed to accept that as fair. Diana herself had transformed in ways I would not have believed possible. She had completed 2 years of intensive therapy and was now training to become a financial counselor, specializing in addiction and impulse control. She attended support groups for people struggling with materialism and overspending. She lived simply in a modest apartment, worked a regular job, and made her monthly payments to me without fail. She reached out to me every few months, usually just a text or email, never demanding, never pushing, just letting me know she was thinking of me and hoping I was well. I responded occasionally, brief but not cold. We had met for coffee twice in 2 years. The conversations were awkward, painful, but honest. She did not make excuses. She owned what she had done. She did not ask for forgiveness, only acknowledged that she was trying to become someone worthy of possibly earning it someday. I use my story in the counseling groups I attend, she told me at our last coffee meeting 6 months ago. I tell people about how I destroyed my relationship with my son for money I do not even have anymore, how I traded something priceless for something worthless. Some people listen. Some people are not ready to hear it. But I keep telling it, because maybe it will help someone make a different choice than I did. I appreciated the effort, even if I was not ready for a full relationship with her. Trust, once shattered so completely, took years to rebuild. If it could be rebuilt at all. But I could acknowledge her transformation without forgetting what she had done. Frank had gone the opposite direction. He remained bitter, angry, convinced he was the victim. His new marriage had already failed. He had burned through his new wife's patience with his constant blaming of others for his problems. He made his monthly payments only because the legal consequences of not doing so were severe. Bailey had cut off all contact with him. So had most of the extended family. Frank had made his choices, and those choices had left him isolated and alone. I felt sad for Frank, but I had learned an important lesson. You cannot force people to grow or change. You can only control your own choices, your own growth, your own path forward. One evening, Emma and I sat on our couch, looking through photos from a weekend trip we had taken. Nothing extravagant. Just a drive up the coast, staying in a modest bed and breakfast, walking on the beach. The photos showed us laughing, relaxed, genuinely happy. Do you ever think about what you would have done with the full 9 million if you had gotten it at 25? Emma asked. I considered the question. Honestly, I probably would have made mistakes. I would have spent too much, trusted the wrong people, not understood the responsibility that comes with that kind of wealth. What my parents did was unforgivable. But in a weird way, it taught me lessons I needed to learn. About the value of hard work, about being careful with money, about not letting material possessions define your worth, so you are grateful for what happened. Emma raised an eyebrow. No, I said firmly. I am not grateful they stole from me. I am not grateful for the years of struggle, but I am grateful for what I learned about myself. I am grateful I found out who I could be when I had to fight for myself. I am grateful I learned the difference between people who truly value me and people who only pretend to. Emma squeezed my hand. You are the strongest person I know. I am not strong, I said. I just decided I was worth fighting for. That is all any of us can do. Decide we are worth the fight. The next Sunday, at breakfast with Arthur, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter he had written, his familiar handwriting covering 2 pages. I want you to read this after I am gone, he said. It explains some things about my relationship with your mother, about mistakes I made that contributed to her resentment. I take responsibility for my part in creating the conditions that led her to make such terrible choices. I did not cause what she did, but I was not blameless either. You do not have to explain. I started, but he raised a hand. I do, though. Not to excuse Diana, but to help you understand. Hurt people, Max. Your mother was hurt in ways I did not fully recognize until recently. That does not justify what she did to you, but it provides context. Understanding does not mean forgiving, but it can mean finding peace. I tucked the letter away, hoping I would not need to read it for many years. As I drove home that afternoon, I thought about the journey I had been on. 25 years of lies, followed by 2 years of truth. 25 years of betrayal, followed by 2 years of justice. 25 years of struggling under the weight of someone else's choices, followed by 2 years of building a life based on my own choices. The money was never really the point. Yes, I should have had $9 million. Yes, I deserved that security and opportunity. But what I really deserved, what every person deserves, is to be valued by the people who claim to love them, to be treated with respect and honesty, to have their future treated as important and worthy of protection. My parents had failed me in those fundamental ways, but their failure had taught me what I would never do to others. I would never take someone for granted. I would never value possessions over people. I would never let pride and jealousy poison my relationships. I would never betray someone's trust for my own gain. I pulled into my parking space and sat in my car for a moment, looking up at my apartment building. Modest, comfortable, mine. Earned through my own work, my own choices, my own fight. Inside, Emma was probably cooking dinner, maybe music playing. Definitely a smile on her face when I walked in. Bailey would call later to tell me about her day. Arthur would text goodnight like he did every evening. This was my life now, built on truth instead of lies, built on self-respect instead of self-doubt, built on the knowledge that when pushed to the edge, I had chosen to fight instead of accept. I had chosen to value myself even when the people who should have valued me did not. For 25 years, I believed I was not worth investing in because that was what my parents' actions told me. I worked myself ragged, trying to prove my value to people who had already decided I had none. The money my grandfather gave me was not just financial security, it was a message that I mattered, that my future mattered, that I was worth something. My parents stole more than dollars. They stole that message. But here is what I learned through all of this. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It is inherent. You do not have to earn love from people who should give it freely. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is fight for yourself, even when it means fighting against the people who should have protected you. The best revenge is not punishment. It is refusing to let someone else's betrayal define your life. It is building something beautiful from the rubble they left behind. It is becoming the person you were always meant to be, despite their efforts to keep you down. I got out of my car and headed up to my apartment, to Emma, to dinner, to an evening of simple contentment. Tomorrow, I would go to work and help other people protect their futures. I would continue building my career, my relationships, my life. The monthly payments would keep arriving from my parents, a reminder that justice sometimes comes slowly but surely. I was not the person I would have been if my parents had been honest and trustworthy. I was someone different, someone harder in some ways, softer in others. Someone who understood both the cruelty people are capable of and the resilience we all possess when we have no other choice. I unlocked my apartment door and walked into my home. Emma called out a greeting from the kitchen. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over me. This was enough. This was more than enough. This was everything. Have you ever had to fight for yourself against someone who should have protected you? Have you ever discovered that your reality was built on lies? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to hear more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding justice. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that they are worth fighting for, that their worth is not determined by how others treat them. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that no matter how dark things seem, you have the strength to fight for yourself and build a life worth living. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you are worth the fight.